And I guess that little red square means that we are live. Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Black Powder Podcast here on the Firearms Radio Network. We got a jolly crew here today. The one and only Lars Mapstead is joining us. You might know him as the guy that you maybe should have picked as your presidential candidate in D.C. As always, my name is Michael White. As always, yes, it hasn't changed any. You can find me at MW for Liberty. Here with Marcus Matthews, of course, my melanated brother in arms, the only real libertarian. And joining us in the car is Eric Parker, Bold Liberty. He may be in and out of audio. So if you're listening to this later, that's why Eric might sound that way. So yeah, again, we got Lars, myself, Marcus, Eric here on the Black Powder Podcast on Firearms Radio Network. We are proudly sponsored by the one and only Common Arms Trade Company. Common Arms Trade Company sounds like it's spelled like it sounds. Just put them in the Google machine. They're your one-stop shop for all things two-way. And of course, 1776swag.com. Remember, it's only treason if you lose. 1776swag.com. Go there, pick up some patriotic merchandise. And remember, and be the sort of American that would make our forebears proud. In this time of great tyranny. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and just bring Lars into the conversation. Lars, welcome to the Black Powder Podcast. It is great to see you again, by the way. I know. So how have things been after DC?
I guess the third time's the charm. This is my third time on Black Powder Podcast. So
yeah,
I'm feeling good right now because I'm
as you should.
You guys like me enough to bring me back 3 times. That's awesome. Things are great. I'm kind of settling in. I'm decompressing a little bit. I went from full speed, 80 hours a week, 4 days or 5 days out of every week on the road for, solid 6 months. And really looking back, it was a year ago that I went to the first main convention. And so literally I was just at a full bore for a year. And then I just went to a screeching halt, like the day after the convention, you know what I mean? And so it was it was kind of like I hit a brick wall a little bit. And so it's been a little bit of trying to decompress and kind of get my head around everything that went on and like how I'm feeling about it, what was the outcomes that were beneficial to me, because there were a lot of good things that came out of this, right? I didn't win, but certainly I achieved a lot of goals that I was setting for myself, that sort of thing. And then after a year or really multiple years of not doing anything around the house for my wife, she's got me doing all the honeydews. So I've been fixing sprinkler heads and, getting stuff painted and, getting all kinds of stuff cleaned up around the house. So, and my youngest daughter just graduated high school and my oldest daughter is getting married next week. So I'm super busy. And then, I've got back into really actively investing, which is, what I kind of is one of my passions, is stock market and cryptocurrencies. And so that's been good. And, I got really lucky and have been a hodler of NVIDIA since 2016.
Which is killing it. Yes. And just had a reverse split, by the way.
Yeah, that's my largest holding at the moment, just because it's grown and grown and grown, right? So and then I was listening to this crypto space today. I really like listening to financial news. It's like the thing that really that's my thing. That's my jam, is kind of figuring out how the economy's going, how all the mechanisms are working, and I think one big thing that came out of this campaign was, I always was about abolishing the Federal Reserve, but holy crap, man, like running for president and talking about it for that is my number one goal in life at this point, is to end the goddamn Fed, because it is so pervasive and so coercive and just touches everybody every day. And it's like one of the worst government agencies that's not a government agency. Right. So I feel like that if there's one thing that I really took away from it, is that we've got to end the Federal Reserve and stop the madness of never ending inflation built into its mandate to steal and rob from the American people on a daily basis. And most Americans have no idea, right? Most Americans are clueless that that's the case, that it's just a tax that just gets you every single day of your life, right? And I mean, people feel it, and then they go on to blame corporations,
Right,
or blame, whatever, evil, greedy bastards, or whatever. And it's like the Federal Reserve puppet master, thing. And so
we
yeah,
have this very strange sort of centrally planned economy that feels very centrally chaotic, right? That's sort of the dual nature of the Federal Reserve, is that we have these boom and bust cycles, that it inflates and then it pops, and then it inflates and then it pops, so it feels very chaotic, but obviously it's very centrally planned as well too. And so when you realize again how much money and in control and power and influence the Federal Reserve has, again, over, it can move, or it can advance or decline the entire U.S. equity market with one statement, right? I mean, when you have that much power in one entity, if it was anything else, we'd abolished it years and years and years ago, right? I'm with you. I remember, back in my trading days, like, Fed days were big days, even when there wasn't anything that was really expected to change. Like, when all those years of, near 0% interest rates, or 0% interest rates, or, QE 1, 2, 3, it was just always like, oh, is the free money going again? Okay, cool. And you knew that, you knew then that it was always just buy the dip, whatever it was, whatever sold off, you could, purchase back into. And yeah, you're right. But the NVIDIA thing, I think, has been interesting. For those that don't know, NVIDIA makes graphics cards, is what they used to make. They used to be a big gaming product. And for those of you who are around in COVID era and were sitting home trying to play video games and trying to buy a GPU, you might have found they were hard to get because people were using them. It turns out they're very good at calculating cryptographic sequences. And they're very good, obviously, for AI applications. And now NVIDIA has sort of cornered that space. And so, yeah, they've had a monumental rise. Lars, do you think that this is a sort of continue to go up thing, or is this like a sell the news thing, or like, where are you with this? Have you reduced your holdings at all?
Well, the thing, I wish there was no taxes, bro.
Right.
Because I'm just saying, like, it would make trading a lot easier if there was no taxes. I probably need to start one of those hedge funds so that I can do the like in and out stuff without the tax consequences. That's how the real rich guys get around it all, by basically putting it all into a hedge fund and then doing the carry trade and the carried interest and all that kind of. And they have a whole game that, like, even if you have money, if you're not playing that game, you're not in the game, right? So, but the thing is like, you're gonna, I live in California, so even though it's long-term capital gains, it's like 13% from California, and then another whatever it is 15% from the Fed, so it's like 28% of your money evaporates instantly. The
good news is when you lose money, you get all those losses that year. No, you don't. Never mind. No, you don't. They want the gains.
Yeah. The thing is I probably would take some off the table now if I didn't have the tax, situation, right? But I don't know. I'm actually gonna keep letting it roll. My second biggest holding, I hold a lot of ETFs, and a long time ago, probably around the same time, I was watching this ETF called SMH, which is the semiconductor index. And I just was I was noticing that every year, and it would outperform the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, and it did that consistently over and over and over again. I'm like, I gotta own this and hold this. If this thing beats everything else, I'm gonna hold. So literally, like, since 2015, I've been holding that one too, and it's grown because of NVIDIA. It's 25%. NVIDIA is 25% of it at this point, so that's another thing. But I'm
so you're breaking a rule. You're double dipping there. You got the individual stock in the ETF
because they added to the S&P 500, they added to the NASDAQ, and it just starts getting to be big numbers. But I think long term, what would you rather invest in, like, I don't know, some mining company, or like chips that are going to power everything from now to, what I mean? Like, I think honestly, I was there in the early days of the internet, 1994, right? When like Mosaic browser first came out, and I remember sitting around at that time and thinking, wow, this internet thing is going to be so big, and people don't even know what it is right now. And people are going to be using it in their kitchens to like call up, recipes and stuff, and even then I didn't realize how big it was going to be. And in fact, in 1999, right when when we were having that crash, right, the big .com crash, I thought, okay, well, internet's kind of over. All the easy money's been made, whatever, right? And we're 24 years later, and the internet's still booming, like insane, right? And so I was kind of sitting there thinking, all right, AI, it's like it's been around for a couple years already. Like the easy money's been made, like And then I was like, wait, I already played this scenario before. Like we got another 25 years of AI coming down the pipe. I'm like, and if it isn't Nvidia, it's some other chip company. So I might as well own all the chip companies and and I don't have to figure out which one wins. I just ride them all to the top, right? So it's like you've got all these different AMD and Intel and there's tons of them, right? There's tons of them. Taiwan Semiconductor, although that one's kind of sketchy because China might go in and blow them up at any minute.
Yeah, it's a little more of a volatile play, right?
But everything relies on Taiwan Semiconductor. That's the problem, is that like none of these chip companies can build the stuff that they need to build without Taiwan Semiconductor. Like they are the gatekeeper of everything, right? And so
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I was getting there in my head about like the concept of like, I don't think that anything right now is a bad investment as long as the free money keeps flowing, right? That's the black swan event, in my opinion. The black swan event, in my opinion, that pulls the rug out of the indexes and pulls the rug out of the U.S. equity market is some sort of Chinese sort of not invasion necessarily, but interruption into that very bottleneck supply chain that everything seems to have, that surrounds it.
For me, I think the black swan thing is the $1 trillion in interest we're paying on our freaking debt right now, and that like at some point that devil comes home to roost, and it's gonna screw things up, man. It's like you guys, maybe have you guys read the Creature from Jekyll Island?
A couple times,
the founding of the Fed and all that kind of stuff, right? And you think about it, and it's like all that stuff was meant to like stop runs on the bank and kind of like basically create a cartel that can monopolize the whole situation, right? But they're spending so much money, they're printing so much money that like they can't control it at this point, right? Like it's like a third of all money that's collected in taxes is going to service interest on our debt right now.
It's crazy.
It's not sustainable. They know it's going to blow up. They have a plan. I don't know what the plan is exactly, but it ain't good for you and me. I think
the plan is what we've talked about for a long time, which is what's the most politically viable thing for them to do, which is just to inflate the debt away, to pay back the debt with worthless dollars. And then at some point in time, we get to that runaway place. And I think that's when they're like, oh, here's the answer. Right. And you already see big major players in the petrodollar jumping out. I mean, you have, I think the Saudi Arabia's jumping out. You know, more countries are joining the BRICS. But it's always the thing you're not seeing. I've learned in markets that if a lot of people are looking at something, that's not going to be the thing. It's always a thing that few people are looking at. So
like mortgage-backed securities.
It's always on the radar. It's always something that's in the ether that's being talked about, but everyone's attention's always somewhere else. And so I do think there's a lot of, and for true reason and good reason, there's a lot of attention on the U.S. debt situation, and there should be, because it is the most massive bubble of all time that's going to pop eventually, right? But before that, like, what is again, these central planners are really good at exporting the devastation via some sort of bubble popping that's not their bubble, right? They've done this time and time again. And so that's what I keep thinking. Is it a China thing? Is it a Russia thing? I mean, like, you got Russia and South Korea coming together now, like, and who all's in on it? Like, who are they in on it too? Like, I mean, are these people even real? Have you ever been to South Korea? Is that even a real place? Like, I mean, we could get in the way. Anyway, I'm with you though, Lars. I think that the tech space is the place to be.
I just want to, because Lars is in the Fed. I think Marcus Matthews, the only real libertarian. I'm going with in the Ed, and the Department of Education has failed the American people so much that. A lot of that stuff I understood, but there were some things I was like, why doesn't the average American know about these things when you talk about the American dream and how it's unattainable right now, when these are missions that they can undertake at a very young age and get to a place where they can have the capital to not put themselves in complete debt when they want to buy a house.
Yeah, I mean, Lars, you hit the nail on the head one day on a post. You were talking about Social Security and about what compounded interest would look like if you were just working a regular job and you were just, your employer was matching a 6% contribution. You kept all your check. Generational wealth. Talk about how many. I mean, how many people out there could have families that were worth hundreds of millions of dollars who we can't be, because as soon as you make the money, it's devalued. You have to give some of it to Uncle Sam. You hope for some things back. I mean, you nailed that with that Social Security post.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I like a big thing that I was trying to push as president, which I didn't really get the message out exactly maybe the way that I wanted to, but I believe every American should be an asset holder. Like that would be my goal, is to get every American to be an asset holder, because when you're an asset holder, you're no longer beholden to the system, to a certain degree, right? Like you can start having some security, you can start taking some risks. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you ain't taking no risk. No. You got to get food on the table for your family and stuff, right? But if you have a little cushion and you have a little bit of like feeling comfortable, then you can start taking some risk. And how you really get wealth is you take risk. Like that's the real, right? And so and obviously saving over time, but like in that post, a lot of people are like, oh, we have to have Social Security because people are so stupid that they won't save for their own retirement. And I'm like, okay, cool. Look, check it out. What if you don't save any, but the 6.5% that the employers are paying, they just put into an account for you, and like mandate that, or something like that, right? Like, and that way everybody gets covered. And then if you want to go in and match it, just like any 401k right now, right? And I think employers would be all for that, because they want their employees to feel like they're they have some security with the company and want to get going on. I mean, that's a lot of what's lost right now, is people have no loyalty to each other. The company doesn't have loyalty to the employee, and the employee doesn't have loyalty to the company. And I think like some of that is lost. I feel like in some ways, though, that was a good relationship, and now that's kind of lost,
I mean, you nailed it, that there is a relationship with risk and reward, right? And that's the capital relationship. And it's out there everywhere. If you want to you have more aggressive bets, you can make more money, but you can also lose more. The odd thing about Social Security is there's all this almost infinite risk. It's literally going bankrupt. I mean, we can look at the spreadsheet and it's going to go bankrupt, and you're forced into it. You have infinite risk downside and no reward, even if things go the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
The best you can hope to do is like what, $1,300 a month?
The best you can hope to do is live a long time and soak as much out of the system as you possibly can. But what if you retire and then the next month you die? Like you just basically gave the government piles and piles of money. That money should go to
they still mismanaged it.
That money should go to your kids. Yeah. It shouldn't go to the stupid government. It's just like a giant tax, vortex of dark hole, where your money disappears into.
Well, I'm so sure you got your kids with a Roth IRA, right? As soon as they turned 18, you had them open a Roth IRA. My Addie does that. She puts $200 a month in it, and I mean, and I've done the calculation. Said, look, even just right now, $200 a month, you'll be a millionaire by the time you retire.
Yeah.
And you don't have to really, worry about that issue. Marcus, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I need to be fair to the government real quick, because Lars didn't touch on this. When you kick the bucket before you start drawing your Social Security, they're going to give your family like $400 or $500.
Yeah.
So
you can pay half the cremation bill at like the cheapest place in town.
So
yeah,
let's be fair to the government, like they're fair to us. That $400 or $500, maybe up to $800. I don't know. It's well below $1,000.
But Marcus, have you noticed too? Have you seen people, Marcus, if you've ever like posted or talked about retirement, that somebody who should be educated in finance all of a sudden says something really stupid to you? Again, like they'll say, but their stock market crashes, and I'm like, who the fuck cashes their 401k out on day one? Like, no one retires and goes, well, I'm selling all of it today, And I mean, what is? It's just crazy.
Well, and that's where I go back to in the ed. Here in California, there was a bill to put financial literacy into the curriculum in high school. It went through committee, and surprisingly enough, it failed because government didn't want it to go through.
Because the most financial literate thing you could have is you understand the government doesn't spend your money well.
But it's going to be on the ballot through a petition that's coming out fall in California.
Oh man, our founding fathers are rolling in their graves, Marcus. They're like, they're having to petition the government to teach their children about the economy.
Yeah, you know, and if
we
we follow
force
that
their
up,
kids into school.
Yeah.
If they don't send them to school, the police will show up, and they're not even allowed to talk about how money works.
I'll have to dig into that. I hate propositions in California because they got the headline thing is great. The headline will be like, no one should be in prison for smoking a joint. And you're like, yeah. And they're like, okay, vote for this bill because no one should be in prison for smoking a joint. You're like, yeah. And then you vote for the thing, and then they're like, all right, all crime is not a crime anymore. You can rob anybody you want.
Crime is legal.
Yeah,
that's on the ballot too, because they're trying to undo Proposition 47, and it's on the ballot because you know what Lars said was it was a very large. It was a tree of truth, not a seed of truth. It was a tree of truth because in California we had a Prop 47 which decriminalized or lessened all kinds of shit. Then those crimes magically blew up like a wildfire out here.
Yeah, imagine
and
that.
Now they're like, hey, what happened? We thought we were going to be nice to people and they would behave, and obviously.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
is that a libertarian saying something like endorsing tyranny? What I just said right now? Did I just endorse tyranny?
I think that you can be a libertarian and want to respect the rule of law where it protects people's property rights and their personhood.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Like I'm all for making sure that if you harm somebody, you pay the penalty. If you're stealing people's crap, you should pay. Like as a libertarian, I think that that's totally fine. Like you need to have strong property rights laws and strong personhood laws. Like, and I think that went through right there. I think that was an affront to basically people that just said, like, look, we're not going to hold anyone accountable, right? And to me, libertarianism is like personal responsibility, right? That you're going to take care of yourself and your stuff, and to the sense that you're also going to be taking care of other people. You're not going to be harming other people, right? So you're going to be taking care of other people's stuff by not doing harm to them, right? So it's all this personal accountability, and that law basically got rid of all the personal accountability in California, which is just why we have all the stores closing down and why everything's locked behind bars and cages when you go into a store now. You know, like the stores are just disappearing. They're like, just go on Amazon. We don't need personal.
Yeah,
stores.
I mean, the retail model isn't dying because it's not available. The retail model is dying because of the basic, I guess you'd say, contract that existed in society for it to be there is failing. You know, I was talking to a voter on their door maybe a couple weeks ago, and one of the sort of criticisms you may get as a libertarian is, oh, well, you'll just let the corporations run wild over us, or we need to have rules and regulations to prevent these people from doing these things. And I think that the misnomer is that we don't want rules or regulations. The truth is that we wanted the ultimate rule, which is you're answerable for the wrongs you create. And that's why we have a court system. And that's what, that's what's supposed to happen. You know, we're getting some other settlement from somewhere here in the state of Arkansas, from some wrong that some large company did. I think, the glyphosate settlement, right? People got cancer, people died, and the government got that money. Arkansas, the government gets the money.
It amazes me when that happens.
Not the people who got hurt. And it's all a cost to doing business, right? And it's all understood that. And so what happens really is that, the voter goes, oh, I really want Mr. Government to protect me from the corporation. So I'm going to vote for you. A lot of regulatory power and a lot of interference. And then all that happens is the government turns around and protects the from you. And that's just a sad reality. Yeah. Eric, I'm sorry.
I would just like to make sure we make a distinct difference between the fact that corporations are a government protected entity, protected by the government. They're not necessarily these altruistic entrepreneurs and private business.
They're now essentially government operators. I think every major corporation in America is a government operative on some level. I mean, there's they're funded by us, protected by us. I mean, I don't think that anybody can say that like Walmart wants a free market economy.
They want when you get big, you want to create moats around your business, and you use the government to create those moats, right? You use government to stifle any other competition from coming in, like through licensing. They're like, oh, and that's all through lobbying, right? They're like, hey, we're we're AT&T, and now we're going to lobby the government that you have to have a super expensive license in order to get into it. And since we're the only ones that can pay the license,
Right.
And then of course there'll be some grandfathered thing. If you were a company that started early, you get it for free, and anybody else that comes along
Speaking
later
of AT,
has to pay
AT&T,
$10 million or some crap,
so
right?
check this out. I learned this today. There's an FCC regulation regarding ham radio and amateur radio that it can't be connected to wireline in certain instances. And this is why it came to be, is like back in the long distance days, okay, people realized that they could connect telephones to ham radios, and they could ham radio across the country, maybe to skip to a zone over, and then that would connect to the local call, and they could have a call back and forth via, you know, radio, and AT&T Ma Bell wouldn't get their money. And so of course the FCC made that illegal. You can't do that, right? Now think about that. Nothing is changing. You're still doing the same thing you'd have done in the hobby to begin with. The local call was being made in the same way it had been made. It was about the fact that we're missing money for no other reason. Use the power and force of government. And I learned about that today because there's an operator in somewhere, I think maybe in New York, that's being shut down, a GMS operator that was doing something like that. So anyway,
let me ask you this, guys, because I get this argument all the time, and I take one side of the argument. Do you think that the corporations corrupt the politicians, or that the politicians are corrupt and therefore taking the money from the corporations? Because I say that if we had principled politicians, if we didn't have corrupt politicians, then the corporations couldn't buy the politicians, right? And so I feel like that's but you know, some people argue that the corporations, you know, get the politician into office, and so therefore they're already bought before they even start.
I think Eric is itching to answer that one.
So I would actually take a third angle and say that it is the issue of the political parties. They choose the politicians that will keep them funded by the corporations. That's really like where I'm going to come from. So
Yeah,
it's a third angle almost,
Which-
and then it's a vicious cycle. Like and you know, Justin Amash has talked about this, how it's you know, professional wrestling, and the parties just choose people that can fundraise the most for their party. That's
Right.
it. Keep the money coming in, and we'll keep getting you elected. And that's really all they care about. And the money keeps coming in by the corporations, so that the corporations can get their special interests and their licensings and their government protection.
Yeah, I think Lars, I think it's an ecosystem that sort of
Yeah.
self-fulfills the prophecy, basically, and you end up with outliers who I think are principled individuals, and they almost squeeze their way through, like Ron Pauls and Thomas Massey's and Justin Amash's, and hopefully Michael White, who's running for office here in District 75 in Arkansas. Hopefully I squeeze through too. But you know, we were talking about this right before the call. Is, you know, voters love the fact that I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I can't tell you how many times voters on their front door are so excited about that. But when I'm talking to like organizations who support candidates, you know, political action committees in the state, oh, you're not one of those? We can't help you.
We can't help
You
you,
see what I'm
bro.
saying? And again, these are people that give to both sides all the time. Like, you know, and so that right there tells you that the machine exists to sort of perpetuate the machine, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I've always believed power doesn't corrupt, because, you know, I have the power over my household here, but I'm not going to do any corrupt crap to my family because, you know, I chose this relationship that we all have together, where it be you got my biological material running through your veins, or, you know, I put biological material on somebody. So I'm paraphrasing something I heard probably 20 years ago about how power doesn't corrupt. It is already a corrupt soul that goes into those areas where they can gain power and abuse it, because there are good people in our government, both Democrat and Republican. There are good people. Unfortunately, we don't ever hear from them, because those are the low dollar people that aren't in the system. And I've always said this: there's two things that Democrats and Republicans will always agree upon. One is war, and two, it's keeping the system that brought them to power the exact same way it is. And that's why you'll see the impediments to a third party like the Libertarian Party in a red state or a blue state. There's going to be impediments, because they know the only way to hold them accountable is a third option, Right now, there's no accountability because it's not about the best ideas. We're not exchanging pertinent information with each other. We're just saying that guy is an a-hole.
That's right.
And let me tell you why.
They don't have any platform anymore. And I mean, what's interesting about what Eric said is that, and kind of one of the things an aha moment on the campaign trail that I had was that the RNC and the DNC are corporations. So we literally have two corporations running the show, right? Running the whole thing. And so it's like so you have all these, the lefties always complain about the corporations, the evil corporations and stuff, right? And I'm like, literally, you guys let a corporation run the entire election system. And they're allowed to manipulate the election system, and they're a corporation, and you don't seem to care about that. Only the ones that basically make money is the ones that you care about. And so I found that interesting, in that you have these. Why would you expect private corporations to run free and fair elections? Like their whole point is to not do that, right? And so
I summoned a Larsism just last week. Let me tell you what happened. Okay. The Republican Party of Arkansas has voted to have closed primaries for the first time in a very, very long time. And Arkansas voter registrations are DR or optional, basically. And optional is neither party. And there's all this talk going on about, well, how do we make sure all the people that are Republicans are registered to vote as Republicans to vote as Republicans in the primary? And people are like, well, some legislators are like, well, we're going to have to maybe fund the Secretary of State's office and all these and like this. And the Michael White Larsism was, would you expect someone who's not a shareholder in Apple to pay for Apple's election of their chairman or their officers, right? And if they want to have that handled, they can handle it themselves. The county clerk is open. The Republican Party has money. The RNC has money. They can contact people, let them do it. You don't need government to come in here and do this.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and so that was, again, I said that to a gentleman who is a registered Republican in Arkansas at a lunch table last week. And he goes, man, that's a really great analogy. And I was like, well, I didn't come up with it. I was like, I did not come up with it.
Yeah.
I bring that comment up from that Liberty lady again. I think that was a good point. As you guys might have noticed since convention, I've rebranded and have dropped the label of Libertarian. I'm still registered as LPF, but I'm done with labels, parties, caucuses, etc. I consider myself a no caucus affiliation Libertarian who will work with people who love liberty. I'm not going to pay any attention to national party, very little attention to my state affiliate. I'm going to put my head down and focus on local. Lars, are you kind of feeling that same sort of vibe a little bit? Maybe a little bit of distaste for the Libertarian label. I know that I am, to be quite honest.
I think I got. I think I came into this whole thing a little naive, right? To be honest with you, like I had this feeling like Libertarian Party was something different, that it was like really championing liberty and championing freedom, and was like all about transparency and ethics and honesty, and my eyes were a little bit opened in the last couple of years of watching this system that essentially is as rigged as the system that we were trying to unrig, right? Like that's the real of it all, right? And so one of the things I came up with a couple of years ago, and I've been kind of throwing this out there, I'm not sure what it looks like or how it looks like, but I was thinking about a political party that has no platform, and its only rule is to get ballot access. And I call it like I have an old domain name, IPP.com. And it'd be the independent political party. And it would just literally be for getting ballot access for anyone that wants to run, and platforming people. Because I was thinking about Kennedy right now. He's running, he's trying to get all these different ballot access, right? But if he was a party right now and he was getting that ballot access, then other people could run later. Like he's just basically burning all that money for nothing. And it just goes, it's just wasted, right? Like instead you could like start a political party and get ballot access. And it's kind of what No Labels was sort of trying to do, and Forward Party was kind of trying to do. I think there's a lot of people that are interested in a more open, transparent network to be allowed to run candidates. And maybe you don't even need a platform. Like, I think that a lot of that is where
Well, I mean, like, think about, we talked about this. I mean, whether you can take 100 Republican politicians in this country and 100 Democrat politicians, and you can get 100 different policy positions from every single one of them on the same subject, right?
Yeah.
And the same with libertarians. I mean, all libertarians don't believe the same thing. And so
Right.
really, we talk about you should know the people on your ballot and what they stand for. And you're right. That's like the perfect volunteerism way of circumventing the system. You're not having to reform the system. We're just saying we're going to play in your rules, and now we're going to have ballot access. I think it's a brilliant idea, Lars, actually.
Lars, we need to talk to you offline about some other stuff to that point. So just keep that in mind.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question. And I wrote this word down probably 25 minutes ago. Different. What would you have done different?
Yeah.
Leading up to the convention.
So what I want to say right now is that we swung for the fences, and I put 110% effort in. I did not say no to anything that was asked of me. They're like, go do this thing at 3 a.m. Go jump on this plane and go to this thing. I'm like, I don't want to go do that, but I'm going to go do it because it was asked of me, right? Like, I literally did everything that was possible in my campaign. I put $1 million into my campaign. I built an insane team. I don't think there's anything I did that I could have done better, but there is something that I could have done different. And what that is that I misjudged the Libertarian Party.
Right.
That I thought, and you heard me say this the entire time, is like, I'm pulling from all sides of the party, right? I'm pulling from all sides of the party. But it turns out that wasn't the truth. That wasn't the real. The real was that the party is split into two factions, two caucuses, two whatever you want to call it, and they hate each other. And they are no different than the duopoly that we hate. That they literally would rather have their candidate almost to point the finger at the other side and say, neener, we won. Like, and so there wasn't an opportunity to really pull from all sides, because you just saw the lines drawn, in the two main guys that were running, and it was really hard to pull people. And to be fair, I had a lot of people telling me, Lars, I love what you're doing. I love your plan. I love all your stuff. And in the end, what they were basically saying was, this election's too important to not vote for the opposite team, because the other side might win. And if the other side might win, it's horrible for all of us. So we've got to hold our line and vote for the, and it's like, I basically, this is my whole thing of the election. I was the third party inside the Libertarian Party.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he was. And so real quick though, I got a question. Who was your favorite policy team member? Who was your favorite person on your policy team? Was it?
This Michael White guy did a lot of work there.
He's all right. We're not here for Michael White right now.
I am, Lars. I'm very much with you on the idea that I felt like a lot of my, previously held, like I said, now I call them delusions, were sort of, shattered regarding how great I thought liberty was with the Libertarian Party, how surely this is a unified, body against the system that is oppressing everybody. And it just fell victim to the same sort of things. And I think what the lesson for me out of all of it was when I left DC was that people are people no matter where they are. Yeah. And that they're always going to be people no matter where they are. And so, that sort of tribalism, that me versus you, oppressor versus oppressee, always will come out in some sort of system, and it just happens like that. And so I'm with Liberty Lady on that. I think the best way to move liberty forward is whatever the individual can do is the next right step. Yeah. Because I'm telling you, I've completely given up, on the Libertarian Party from a national level. I personally have them saying it right now on the Black Powder podcast. I have very little faith or hope that they can ever actually accomplish anything in real life on a federal level at all. Yeah. I
don't know. I think like right now, no, but like, time changes everything, right?
Sure.
You could come back in 8 years and you're already seeing a lot of the people that were players from the last 4 years, they're all leaving.
Right.
because I think they got disillusioned too. They thought they were going to pull out, everybody thought they were going to do something, and nobody really got what they wanted, and everybody like walked away from the convention sort of, pissed off, and people are leaving. People who were orchestrating the whole situation, right, are leaving. Right. And so I think that there could be, if we had some big structural changes, then right. there could be some major stuff going on. Like one of the things that I said a lot through and through, that we wasted $1.5 million right. getting to the convention, on hotel right. rooms, on whatever. I spent almost $100,000 on the convention, just 4 days at the convention, right? Like I just burned money. And the thing is that if you watch the Republican National Committee or the Democrat National, those conventions that they hold, they're not like doing bylaws, and they're not right. arguing out stuff. And what they're doing is it's a dog and pony show to show off the best of the Republicans and the right. best of the Democrats. They already picked who they're going to have. Right. They don't do any of that stuff. And like we're out there on C-SPAN airing our dirty laundry and shaking it around and showing everybody. And then people are like, "Those libertarians are crazy. Did you see what the Republican convention looks like? Did you see what the Democrat convention?" Those people, those libertarians are nuts, right? Because like, look, I brought people to the convention that had, were kind of outside the party and hadn't really, and they were like, what is going, this is wild.
Parliamentary politics is always crazy, even in the smallest of rooms, whether it's your local Kiwanis club or it's anything. If you see the behind the scenes, there's always the personalities who want to speak on everything. No matter if they're really for or against it, they just want to have their 5 minutes to talk. There's people who always want to make everything divisive, no matter what it is. I'm speaking against the motion just because they want to. No, I'm with you. I mean, I think that the Libertarian Party from national level, if it's going to exist at all, needs to just focus on local elections. Like that. That's what it needs to be doing.
Ballot access, I think, is the number one thing.
But if we just spent the past 20 years focusing on local elections and identifying key areas where we could put people in state legislatures, we could get ballot access changed. But we keep playing the game their way and then hoping to change it. I mean, so I'm with you. I mean, as somebody who's running a very active campaign and a winnable campaign, I look at all the waste and go, y'all could really have supported me a little bit. Yeah. I mean,
well, and look, the other thing is the fighting scares people away. Right. And it's like you can't have a really good organization if you're constantly turning people over. Like, and that with running businesses, if
turnover kills everything.
Business, and it's like the turnover of your people, and you have to retrain them over and over and over again.
Not build a culture in a turnover company.
These aren't paid positions, right? These are volunteer positions. So when you burn out a volunteer, they ain't coming back. It's not like you're like offering them a 401k plan and some like, what I mean? Like they're like, dude, I just gave you my blood, sweat, and tears, and you crapped on me. I'm out of here, right? Yeah. And it's and I think you're seeing that all across the party right now in every direction, and it's just not good. We need to basically pull it together. It needs to be run more like a business. It needs to have very focused goals, and everybody needs to move. And so one of the main things that came out of this for me is that in all the companies that I've ever run or all the businesses I've ever dealt with, there's a board of directors that steers the ship, right? That steers the company, it steers the organization. And right now, our organization is steered by the LNC that gets picked every couple of years, and the turnover is constant. So what I'd like to see is the board would be made up of ex-chairs. So as you are a chair and you rotate out of your chair, you go onto the board, and then you have like 8 cycles of chairs, like with all their knowledge and all their knowing of how things went, and knowing like 15 years ago we did this and it didn't work, and 10 years ago we did this and it didn't work, and so we should try this. And so that institutional knowledge would help really steer the ship. And like I feel like in a lot of ways the national party doesn't have a goal.
I would love to see that, minus the current chair that in the LPN. I said Libertarian, whatever. I'm not a big Angela fan. The way she lifted up Republicans into the Libertarian Convention, I felt it was a distraction. And the fact that we had excellent candidates up and down the board, most of which came on this podcast, some more than others, and the ones more than others we truly appreciate you. And, you know, it's one of the reasons we had Lars on first.
Yeah.
After the convention. We haven't had a podcast since the convention.
So, Lars,
And,
the reason,
yeah.
let me ask you a question too. You know, Young Americans for Liberty is having a conference in August in Orlando. And one thing that you can't, you know, you can knock a lot of, you know, political organizations out there, but Young Americans for Liberty does the work. Right? Like they run phone banks, they do direct mailer, they go and target and find candidates in the country that align with liberty, and they help them get elected. Right? And it kind of saddens me a little bit that like they have to even kind of exist, because really that's what the Libertarian Party should be doing already, right?
Yeah,
like in a perfect world, I think I'm kind of with you. I think that the model would look like, you know, we're trying candidates who want to support liberty, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, it doesn't matter. You know, we're an advocacy organization, a ballot access organization. We support individuals. You know, we put on a convention that shows the best and brightest that we have. You know, that's our moment to move the Overton window, but we're focused on actually occupying offices. And like I realized that again, I'm having these thoughts on the plane back to Little Rock, and I'm like, man, that's not ever gonna happen. I was like, that's never gonna happen.
And that's why I think a lot of people splinter off and start up their own thing outside the Libertarian Party, right? Like that's why you have like You Are the Power with Spike Cohen, that he's doing his thing.
Doing the work.
And you've got these other groups that are splintering off and doing their own thing, right? It's like I was donated some money to Thomas Queter. And you know, he's doing a whole thing for helping people that have mobility issues, right? And like trying to change laws. And Harrison Kemp up in Maine is trying to you know, get rid of ballot access and lower ballot access across states. And you don't need to have national party stuff, right? So like for me right now, what I'm focused on, because I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to be doing liberty stuff too. But for me, the number one most important thing to like affect change is to be able to get on the ballot. Like if you can't get on the ballot, like what's the point of a political party, right? Like, so to me, what I realized is that we're kind of idiots. Like all third party candidates are kind of idiots, because we are on this hamster wheel and we keep going for the cheese. And you know, the thing is we keep paying for ballot access every time, right? And that's a rigged system, but we're playing the rigged system. What we got to do is reduce the ballot access so that the fees are really low for everybody. And that reaps dividends over and over and over again, because right now ballot access is used as a tool by the duopoly to steal our resources, to stop us from having any resources by the time we get to the starting line, because they don't have to pay the same fees, you know, that we do. And it's like, Fina in Florida, right? She ran in Hawaii, and her filing fees were something like $65 for Congress, right? Then she moved to Florida, and it was $10,000, same exact position. And I'm like, no, that's BS. Like if you're running for a federal office, and that's what the Voters' Bill of Rights was all about, is we need to level the playing field. And it's like, it should be the same in every state. You shouldn't have this like gateway of like $10,000 for libertarians. You know how hard it is to raise money. $10,000 is a lot of money for most libertarian candidates, right? Like
most Americans.
Right. So basically, only rich people can run for Congress in Florida. That doesn't seem
so
right.
Let me ask you. So do you think then maybe again this goes back to an old debate? Like, is the best sort of methodology for moving liberty forward is, hey, play inside the Democrat and Republican Party as liberty warriors in those campaigns? I mean, in those areas, because like we've always talked about that, but it never seems to work either, right? I mean, like there's only a handful of people that make it through that sort of fence, you know?
Yeah.
Can I answer that real quick?
Sure. Mark,
so
go ahead.
When the Democrats had a 3-4 seat majority in Congress right before the Republicans recently took over, Nancy Pelosi did not have one issue with one Democrat voting against whatever she brought to the floor. They were solid in their unification as far as voting for what the Democratic Party said. This is what we need to vote for. Republicans are a tad bit different. They're having a lot more issues lining up everybody to that regard. libertarians, I don't know if we could ever line up.
I mean, I think that there is something to be said about the philosophical disconnect between people that abhor centralized power and then trying to form a centralized organization. I think that there's always going to be sort of this thing that doesn't make, the parts don't connect. But on a federal level, I've kind of given up on the federal government. I mean, I'm to the point now where I don't think it can be saved. I don't think that I think the failure of it is designed as a feature, not a bug. I think that's where, back to the Fed, the central bankers. Eric, yes, I'm sorry, I'm ranting about the demise of the federal government. Go ahead.
I was just trying to keep us on the topic and the point that you were kind of asking Lars about. And it's a debate that has happened within, I think it was Tho Bishop versus Dave Smith. Basically that same question.
It was Eric Brakey. We had him here on the podcast.
Yeah. And, that was Eric Brakey.
I met him.
Yeah, good guy.
And now everyone's saying, you know what? I think Eric Brakey won that debate. But I disagree, though, because Virginia just had their Republican primaries last week or this week, and not a single grassroots, anti-establishment, pro-liberty, limited government candidate won their primary.
Are their primaries in Virginia closed, open? Like, how are they working?
I think it depends on you can make it. Well, all right. So I know Florida was like it would be open unless there was a write-in candidate, and then it would close it. And what the establishment would do is they would always have some no-name nobody throw his hat in the ring as a write-in candidate, and it would close it. And they would sometimes do that last minute, or they might leave it open if they think, all right, well, our establishment Republican leans a little to the left, he's more moderate, we might need Democrat votes, so they might want to keep it open. They would use that strategy and game plan. And I know some good grassroots Republicans, you know what I mean? But they barely win. In Jacksonville, when I ran for city council, 19 seats, only one of them was won by a good.
Well, and we saw it we talked about this almost a year ago with sort of the Kennedy effect too. We talk a lot about on the Republican side, but like on the Democrat side, like, again, Kennedy's a statist. I'm not saying that he's some libertarian. He's not, but he definitely would be, if I had to have a conversation with a Democrat, he's a classical liberal. I could have a conversation with this gentleman. I could probably come at a compromise of some things. They pushed him out. Like, they're like, you can't be in the party. Like, you got to go.
Marcus, they had Cinema and Manchin, the Democrats, and those were the things that were sticking them up. So they had their own problems too. And I think, Justin Amash kind of like enlightened me to this a little bit, because he was a Republican, right? And then he was trying to do liberty stuff, and he was able to move the needle a little bit. But if you listen to him, what he said was, look, there's only 5 or 6 people in Congress that run everything. They don't even let you like come at the bill or anything. Like, you think you're going to Washington and you're going to change stuff, and I'm elected now, I'm going to change. No, you ain't doing nothing. You're going to sit in your seat and behave. Otherwise you ain't getting appointed to nothing, and you're going to be a one-term person. And like, you know what I mean? And so like, I think the thing is like, if you say, oh, well, we should run as a Republican or run as a Democrat in order to affect change, you're not affecting change there either. The only way that I could see that happening is if you if you said, okay, look, everybody that's a libertarian is going to run as whatever, a Republican or a Democrat, all at the same time across the country. Like, and we're all going to push this same message, and then it's going to be like a caucus with inside those things, because that's
Liberty caucus that was cross-party.
That was
cross-party Liberty Caucus,
right? That was like what that was. That was like Tea Party thing, or the Bernie Sanders thing. These were caucuses inside.
I think they just shut this shit down. Sorry,
100%.
I think that there's, like I said, we talked a little bit earlier about feds and parties, and maybe this is the reason.
Bernie's a fed.
The truth is, whoever kept Bernie probably out of the Democrat primary, was probably was a fed. This is an entrenched system, as you know, that's rigged because you ran to unrig it. And I think sometimes, like you said, the only thing maybe we've done differently is we didn't realize how rigged it was. It's even rigged where the LP is rigged.
Yep.
I mean, that's how rigged it is. And that's a sobering reality, I think, that people are having to deal with, that are awake and understanding it,
I think to Lars's point, I'm sorry, Lars.
No,
but to your point, when you talk about the 4 or 5 people that actually run Krogers, that's why you see personalities get elected more so than people. You look at these people that are going to do the talking points that excites the base. Like Louisiana, they just signed a law where 10 Commandments are going in.
Yeah, I don't know. Golly. Yeah.
And I don't think first of all, I don't think they understand precedent and what you're actually doing.
I don't know anybody. And look, I know a lot of like evangelical Christians in Louisiana. It's hard not to. I grew up there. I lived there for most of my life. They're not even happy about it. They're like, don't they understand what this is going to do? Like they're not even happy.
Now you got to open it to everybody. And in Oklahoma, they did some similar things. And Satan has got a statue of their goat god.
That's right.
Well, maybe maybe that's the point. Maybe that was the whole thing, Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And all of this, to me, all of this boils down to education, because Americans refuse to think critically.
Yeah.
We just want I said this maybe 15 years ago. Americans want their Hungry Man TV dinner with no cold center on the Salisbury steak. They want their Benz TV on their comfortable couch, and they want to go to work and know that a paycheck is coming in so they can live week to week.
Yeah.
That's what Americans want, because what is it? 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So they don't want the disruption that the Democrats and Republicans are so good at selling them if you don't elect them.
Right.
And what libertarians I got in an argument with somebody recently here in LA County, the Libertarian Party, about the Mises Caucus. I'm not a big fan. And I don't want to have a war or beef with them. I just think they indulge themselves too much in these cultural wars. And that appeals to the lowest common denominator of the worst of American personalities. Because when you indulge in this culture war and not stick to the fact that we need to let people live their life as long as they're doing no harm, you're saying my form of government needs to be in your life. And that's going to get a natural reaction from a lot of people across the whole political spectrum, because they just feel, that enemy.
I had somebody say something that like you'd like. Someone told me the other day, they said, like, we think that we're like writing the story, but the truth is the narrative's already framed.
Oh,
and I was like, yeah, I mean, it's like we think that we're in control, but it's like a pick your own adventure book.
That's right. You have an illusion of choice.
Yeah. You're inside this thing. You're like, oh, I'm making the choice, but you're not making the choice. Like at the end of the book, the pumpkin turns into whatever.
That's right.
Like,
that's right. There's only two outcomes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I learned that voting, 20, 30 years ago, that we have this illusion of choice in America. You're going to be handed shit sandwich A or shit sandwich B, and that's what you're going to get the pick from. And don't we have choices in America? It's like, no, we don't. Like, that's not a choice. Like that's Coke or Pepsi only. And if I like Sprite or 7-Up or Dr. Pepper or something like that, I don't get any of that.
We've always had it sort of right, which is we always said that the politics that affects you the most is going to be local. Mm-hmm. Local is the one that you can affect the most. You can organize. It doesn't take much to go ahead and win like a school board seat. You know what I mean? Like if you got a lot of people organized, that's a doable thing for individuals to do. And I think that like there's not going to be any centralized solution. I think that people just have to get out there and do it, because no matter what happens, it's going to be sort of like, I guess, perverted. The incentive will exist for it to be perverted in some other mechanism. And like I said, it's sad because, Lars, you were my favorite candidate for a number of reasons. I came to work on your campaign because I thought you had the most serious campaign. I thought that you had the most practical message. And you had in my opinion, very unifying message, which was like, it's not red versus blue. It's, the authorities versus you. This system is rigged. I mean, I remember testing that phrase out to people, like, unrig the system. Everybody liked that. Yeah. Democrat, Republican, didn't matter how they voted. What, white collar, blue collar, didn't matter what color shirt they wore. People understand the system is rigged, and I think that's where we are now. It's still rigged, Lars. You didn't win. You didn't change the world. So we're back at square one. So, but again, I am very proud of you in the fact of how big of a voice in the liberty movement you've become. You're a very loud voice. You're, present in a lot of things. There's certainly no doubt that everyone now in the liberty movement knows you, and not just in the LP, but like you said, you are the power, other circles of influence outside of that. So I personally believe that you're just getting started. That's my belief. I think you're just getting started.
I want to be a part of that. I want to get on the ground game with this Lars thing.
Yeah. Lars is awesome. What
did you say, Eric?
I was saying Lars made the cover of the New York Times with the Trump people peeling up his advertisements off the floor. You know what I mean? Like, that's huge. That
Yeah.
alone, and had the establishment paid propagandist Laura Loomer saying he was our candidate, essentially, about the Stop 270. Like, you hadn't even been, like, hindsight, you didn't, but you hadn't even been chosen yet, and you were pissing off the establishment so bad that one of their paid propagandists was like, look at these extremists. You dang right, look at these extremists.
Yeah, I think they were quite happy that I was not the nominee. I think I'm looking still at all the polls. I'm still following the polls, and like, dude, the momentum I had going into the convention with polling, like the establishment was starting to freak out, and
Right.
and we saw that in a number of ways. But like I said, I miscalculated that. I thought there would be enough people, centrist people in the party, that just wanted to move, forward with, crushing government. And there just wasn't that. There was just, there was people, they were so, factionalized. And I just really thought people were going to unfactionalize themselves. And that just wasn't the case. Right. It's like, and I guess that's why, like, there's this like thought, like, Democrats and Republicans are never going to unfactionalize themselves. Right, like that, like it's the same thing, right? Like they're like, and you hear it in all the like propaganda and the gaslighting. This election's too important. You should run in 2028, but this election's too important to vote for a libertarian or vote for anything different than And it was the same kind of message coming out inside the Libertarian Party, really.
Yeah, and I think like it attracts these personalities, I think, that sort of want to be like the island of misfit toys. I think that's also another thing that sort of happens. And I take liberty seriously. You take liberty seriously. There's a lot of unserious people, that are out there that are really in this, I think, for the wrong reasons, right? For either self-aggrandizement or to be some sort of personality, whether it's, big fish in a little pond. And like I said, man, 2 years ago, if you asked me what was more important, local or national, I said local. If you asked me 2 years ago, Michael, is everything rigged? I'd have been like, yes. And I'm back to where I was. I was like, yes, local's important and everything's rigged. Like, I mean, that's where I am.
I came up with that, the federal government kind of carpet bombs its citizens from 30,000 feet. That, like, the effects that you get are like taxation and like regulations and stuff. They're not like in your face. Right. But local government, when you have a problem with local government, it's a dude behind a counter, right? And he's literally holding a gun to your head, and whatever he says goes, right? Like, he's judge, jury, and executioner in that moment. And like, your only recourse is to like sue the city or sue, like, and nobody has time or resources to do that. So basically they're these like authoritarian, punishing people. And they will, if they wake up on the wrong side of the bed that day, or their old lady's yelling at them, they're going to make your life miserable. And the rules change based on how their day is going, which is just absolutely ridiculous.
If you ever have you ever had like a conversation with a statist where you're like, there's someone that just worships the state
every day,
and you sit there and you bring up some topic, and their always default is, well, if we just get just the right person with just the right power and just the right place and do just the right thing with just the right, and I'm like, how many just the rights do you have to get to in your world, in this worldview that you have? Even you are admitting by the words you're saying that your recipe for success is incredibly nearly impossible. Shouldn't we have a system where the recipe for success is very easy, right? And liberty is a very easy recipe for success. Again, don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff, period. And that's it. And you kind of go from there. Anyway, it's just like I said, you're bringing up old wounds here, Lars. I hadn't seen you in person. I mean, I haven't seen you. We've talked, but we texted and stuff, but I haven't seen your face since convention. I'm like, oh, my boy didn't get through.
There's one last point I want to touch on the rig system.
Sure.
And I hope we could expand on this in the future. But it's how the federal voting districts are drawn.
Yeah,
because oftentimes they choose the voters, and you're not choosing the politicians. Because I remember seeing Texas.
And I think we should add into that conversation not just how the districts are drawn, but also who's counting the votes.
Yeah,
like there's an interesting thing there too, Lars. I didn't realize how rigged that was either.
One thing on both those topics. So interestingly, I own a lot of stocks, and I get notices all the time. Vote on this shareholder meeting like
Right.
vote for the board of directors, vote for like this thing that's going on. I get that all the time. And so the other day I was like, who runs those elections? Like this is corporate finance. We're talking $1 trillion companies, Apple and Microsoft, and these guys. And it turns out there's 3 or 4 companies that run all the elections for all the corporations in America. Every day there's millions and millions of shareholders voting for these elections, and somehow they're able to do it where it's totally secure and they have full faith and confidence that the vote is going through properly. And then I was like, what? And so I started looking into it, and there's basically like 4 companies that do it all, and they have figured out all the ways to make it secure and make it so that only one person's voting. And I'm like, it's weird that the regular corporations, the market, figured this out, but the government can't figure it out. I'm like, maybe we should just hire these companies to basically run the show here.
It's almost like, I think we spent $44 billion so far for the broadband thing, right?
Oh,
and
God,
hooked up.
Don't even get me started on that.
Nobody's been hooked up, but like Starlink figured it out all along the way, right? This is always the lesson of all this, is that, again, government breeds mediocrity. You get mediocre results. You have this morass of corruption. And, here we are. I mean, so like, the thing they got going in Michigan now with, they took some power away from like the board of canvassers to look over elections, and they gave it to the local prosecutors. Well, do you think the local prosecutor in Detroit is going to investigate voter fraud? Like, no, they're not going. If it's their guy, they're not going to, because guess what? They're an elected position too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, so it's just absolutely wild. So, Lars, what's next for you in the next 12 months? What is Lars doing?
Well, I'm looking for something to kind of work on that's going to have, I like my life. For me, I have to have purpose. I have to be doing something that feels like I'm moving toward a goal. Like that's my thing. That's what I'm always all about, right? So right now I'm working on ballot access, an organization for ballot access, and I'm been talking to quite a few people on that kind of a thing. And so that's a big thing. And then I might be looking into trying to get into some kind of AI thing, because I just feel like that's like really going to be the powerhouse for the next 25 or 30 years. And so I'm kind of maybe looking for something in the startup space to like lend my ideas and my thoughts to on that. And also just enjoying family and that sort of thing. But I think I think ballot access is my critical piece. And somebody had put in there that they hoped that I was a max donor to Mr. Michael White, and I am indeed a max donor to Mr. Michael White.
I think Charles Belay dropped in here too. Charles, if you're watching the podcast, if you have any leftover campaign funds, I absolutely need them. I'm in a very difficult. I don't have the big donor base that my Democrat opposition does. So yes, but yes, Lars Mapstead is a max donor to my campaign.
And I think that your campaign is one of the few in the country that's possibly winnable, and so I want to back that. Plus, like you broed me out so much on all time and effort and energy, and it's like this is something that I wanted to say too, is like after I got done with convention, because people know I have money. Everyone came out of the woodwork, and it's like, bro, I got this business plan, bro, I need some money, bro. And I'm like, wait a minute, did you vote for me?
Where were you? Yeah, exactly.
Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I needed an endorsement? Where were you when I need, like, I'm sorry, wait, what? And now you want I'm like, so I had to pay $25,000 or $30,000 in order to participate in the debate on the national floor, right?
Yeah.
How much did you donate to me to help me and get in the debate? Oh, none. Well, maybe I'm not so much going to be like stoked on giving you money, right? And what I realize is like the 3 of you guys all have my back in a big way, right? And so like I'm happy to support people who have my back. It's a two-way street. It's not like just like give, right? And it's like, I worked hard for my money. I worked hard for my position, and I don't just give it away freely. It's like I want a reciprocal, right? A reciprocal effect from that. And so, and you totally deserve it, and you have a winnable race. So it makes it easy, right? And look, I went all over the country and there's only a few states that are actually running candidates. Like most of the states, that their whole goal, the goal of the Libertarian Party, is to run candidates and win election, right? And if you're a state chair, if you're running a state and you're not running any candidates, why are you even bothering to show up at your own state stuff?
Right.
Please.
Yeah.
Like, really, please. Like, what is your damn job, right? Like, if you were part of my company, you'd all be fired, all of you. Like, if you ain't doing a job, get the fuck out.
Dark Lars. I like Dark Lars.
I do too. I love Rant Lars. I really do. It's always, during the campaign, and when we would do debate prep and we would go over debate stuff, like that was always something that, remember, Lars, that was something we'd always talk about. Is like, when you start ranting, you're really good. So like, get pissed. Because it was always really good. I'm going to tell a story for the people at home and then we can kind of wrap this up. But when, Lars, you reached out to me, I think after the close of 2022, and said, hey, look, I'm looking to run for president. I'm trying to build a team. You're somebody that I'd like to work with. And you and I had like a Zoom call. I remember I was sitting on my patio and I had my laptop out and we talked for about an hour and a half, I feel like. And we had a very just kind of, it was just a super cool conversation, just like, where are you at on stuff? And we talked about like family and life and sort of, we didn't get into the nitty gritty of really politics. We got into what your worldview of life was like. And I've always been able, I feel like once I know that about somebody, I know if I can work with them or not, or if they're a good person or not. And like, it was just a great conversation, man. And I remember after that, I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm gonna be helping Lars out, with this stuff. She goes, she was like, oh, so like, you're getting paid? I was like, I'm not getting paid anything. I was like, he just needs some help and he's a really good dude. And it really was a lot of fun. We had calls every week and I miss those calls. And like, I texted Larry the other day and I was like, man, I miss you, dude. Where you been? But yeah, it was a great experience. Like I said, you did accomplish a lot. I think more so than you even realized today. I think there's a number of seeds that you planted that are going to grow into very bountiful fruit in the future for you in the Liberty space that, if you didn't do what you did, you wouldn't have those opportunities in the future.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with the journey, and the outcomes of it. I mean, of course I would have liked to have won. I would have liked to have tried to push the stop 270. I think that it was, a good goal with worthy legs. It didn't work out, and I'm fine with that too. Like I went into the convention with not really married to the outcome. Like I was good either way. But there, there's a little pieces of me. Like I saw Chase was on with John Stossel, and I'm like, damn it, I want to be on with John Stossel.
Oh no, John Stossel, yeah, exactly.
So there's like, but the thing is like, God, man, campaigning, as is hard work, right? And you don't get to just put it down and be like, you know what, I'm tired today, I'm gonna do this, right? Mm-hmm. No, you're getting up and doing it no matter what, right? And so like there's a part of me that's like, I like that for a couple of days and then I want to take a week off. And it's like, when you're campaigning, there is no week off. You're like,
no, there's not. Yeah. And I, like I said, you did everything you were asked. You showed up to everything. You jumped on everything. You did the deal, man. You did the work. And I mean, if it was one on work and effort, there's no doubt that I think you did more than anybody. And that's saying a lot because Chase did a lot of work. I mean, he, 50 state tour and everything else, but you were, I remember there were days where you were turning around and doing like you were in two different cities one day, the next day you were in another one. And I was like, this guy's going full tilt, man,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway, dude. Well, Marcus, you got any other burning desires? Eric, anything for Mr. Lars Mapstead, the one and only?
No, I would only ask Lars to stay on another 5 to 8 minutes afterwards so we can talk some things.
Sure.
That's my only thing. Eric?
No, man, Lars, it was thank you for running, because you gave me a candidate that I feel like I supported. You're my number one guy from the moment I met you until I could cast my last vote for you at convention. So I appreciate you for running. And I always tell people, and I think you did, and Michael, you too, have fun while you're doing this. There's more to this than winning elections, even though that is the number one goal. And I really do think it's the relationships. It's the friends we make along the way.
That's
Yeah.
true. That's a great Eric. Thank you for that.
Damn.
That is a wonderful.
That
We
got
need to
some-
put that on a pillow.
Yeah,
That is
that was-
really.
uh,
That is really so for your chicken soup for the soul today on the Black Powder Podcast on Firearms Radio Network. You can thank Mr. Eric Parker for that one. As always, it's been a pleasure to be with the audience. Again, my name is Michael White. You can find me on all your socials at MW4 Liberty. I'm joined as always by my melanated brother in arms, Mr. Marcus Matthews, the only
Hello.
real libertarian. Just search the Black Powder Podcast on Facebook and you'll find him. And of course, Eric Parker, Bold Liberty. You can find him on socials at Eric P. And I think it's 94. Isn't it Eric P 94? Yeah, 904. Eric P 904. And of course, Lars Mapstead, who tonight on the screen is just Lars, but it's Lars Mapstead. And again, Google him. You'll find more than enough stuff. He's left a lot of things for the Liberty movement to still have. Voters' Bill of Rights, a lot of great policy papers, white pages on a number of things. So anyway, it's been a lot of fun. Be sure to tune in next time when we announce an episode here on the Firearms Radio Network. We appreciate being in the rotation. And as always, we will end with live free
live free
or die.
or die.
Take us
Or die.
offline.